Good morning, everybody. Thank you so much for joining us for another episode of Library Talk and Everything Else. Today is Thursday, April 17th, and I am so happy that you are here spending your Thursday morning with us. So last week we didn't have a show because we were participating, at least the student media was participating in a competition, so we didn't have a show last week. And I say that because we have a couple of more shows left. We have this week and we have next week, and then our last show for the season will be May 1st. Thank you so very much if you're discovering the show for the first time. We truly appreciate you being here. If you are a long time listener, muchas gracias. Thank you for your support since the beginning. We keep doing it for all of you. So today I was thinking, this is a topic that I have not discussed at all. And as a librarian, I was wondering why I haven't covered librarianship and libraries. So today, that's what we're going to do. We're going to talk about libraries because they are changing, they are evolving. Things are happening within libraries. When you talk about legislation, when you talk about AI, when you talk about how libraries are impacting communities, things are part of that conversation. So we're going to talk about that today. We're going to talk about our profession as librarians, our work as libraries, and what we do and what we excel at, and what it is that we are, in a sense, losing a lot of students towards. So it's going to be an interesting conversation, and I want to see where it goes. You're listening to Library Talk and Everything Else only on Vaquero Radio, the Valley's student station. Good morning, everybody. Thank you so much again. If you're returning from the break, we truly appreciate you being here. If you're just catching up to the show, this is Library Talk and Everything Else. So I really mixed it up genre style, didn't I? We played some Tao Tao from Control, and we played Take On Me. Probably don't hear those songs back to back very often, but thank you so much for being supportive of the show. So as we were going into the break, we're talking about what our show is going to be about today. And if you are joining us for the first time, this is a research-based show. And every episode, we do look at a research question. We use it as a guide. We use it to kind of navigate the show. If we answer, we do. If we don't, whether we do or we don't, we are going to use that sort of to kind of get the conversation going. And I want to see where the conversation is going to take us today, because we are going to be discussing librarians and librarianship as well as libraries in general, because as things are evolving with technology and as things are changing, we want to take a look at the history of libraries. We want to take a look at where we started and where we are and where we are possibly going with the introduction to AI into our daily services and into our work and into our jobs. What is AI going to do, and what does artificial intelligence mean for the libraries and for librarians? Because that is a question that has been coming up, is, well, the need of librarians, the need for librarians as AI begins to overtake a lot of our information resources, takes over a lot of information management, but librarians are still needed. So this episode is dedicated to all my library counterparts, my librarian friends, and everybody that is a librarian and is part of a library, from a public library to a school library to a university library. This show is for you. So, as I mentioned, we do start with a research question, and today's research question is going to be, how are libraries and librarians adapting to roles to meet the evolving needs of a digital age library user? Our users are getting more and more tech savvy as they come into the library. They have had years of experience with technology, with tablets, with phones, with iPads, with computers. And so a lot of students that we're seeing that are getting younger and younger are already coming into the library with a very vast amount of knowledge when it comes to technology. But that doesn't always translate into finding information, finding credible information. So yes, we may be apt and we may be ready with all the technological tools when we come into college, when we're going into that public library, or we're going into that middle school library or that elementary library. We may already come, and these students may already come with all of these technological advances that maybe are beyond our understanding as librarians. But one of the things that we do know how to do as librarians is we know how to adapt, and we know how to catch up. and we know how to use these tools to our advantage. And it is a great opportunity and a great experience to meet somebody that is young, that is coming to us with those technological skills, whether as an employee, whether as a student, whether as a researcher, because they have a basis that we as librarians can use. And maybe we can learn from them. But in this digital age of equipment and tools and resources and information overload, a lot of times with social media, with Facebook, with all this that is continuously being part of our daily lives, how do we disseminate what is information overload and what is information that we need? And that's what librarians can do. That's what they are equipped to do. A lot of times, students that start working at the library, at least here at the university level, they can't really distinguish between a library staff member and a librarian. And I know for myself, I started working at the library back in 1995. And I know I'm aging myself, but I started working at the library in 1995 at the University of Texas at Brownsville, Texas Southmost College Library. And I myself didn't know what a librarian was as opposed to a regular library employee. When I found out that you needed a master's in library science or a master's in library information sciences, I was really surprised. I really didn't know that a librarian needed that sort of education. So I became interested in it. I became fascinated by the role that librarians were playing, the role that every library staff member was playing. But librarians in particular, because I was in a point where I really didn't know what I wanted to do in life. So I wanted to study education. I wanted to study history and English, but I really didn't know what it was that I was going to do. And then I met several librarians, and I really was fascinated by what they were doing. And I really enjoyed what they were doing. And so I decided, you know what? This is what I want to do. I want to study to become a librarian. But first I became a teacher. And I am so glad that I became a teacher. I met so many wonderful people, wonderful students, wonderful administrators, teachers that are still friends of mine to this day. So I'm glad that I took that route. After that, I returned to the library back in 2003 and became a full-fledged librarian in 2005. But I want to take you back a little bit further. I want to take you back to my exposure to libraries. Because my introduction to libraries was by my father. My father was studying at what used to be at the time TSC, before the UTB partnership. And my father was studying to become an educator. And my father would bring me with him in the summers to the library, because the library here at Texas Southmost College also served as the community college. As the community library. It was the Brownsville Public Library of its time. And so in 1994, that eventually changed to a new library being built. But I remember my father bringing me, as he was studying, he would leave me in the children's section of the public library, attached again to Texas Southmost College. And in that library, I loved it because I had access to so many children's books. I could listen to music. I could listen to LPs, which are records. They had record players set up. They had newspapers. And I just loved coming with my dad to the library. I really enjoyed it. And he would check books out for me, and I'd go home and I'd eat them all up. And then I'd come back next week with him to check out a whole other series of books. And that was my exposure to the library. After that, again, I went to high school and would go to my library every once in a while. But it wasn't until I started working at the library here at UTB-TSC at that point in 1995 that I fell in love with the library all over again, to the point where I decided that I wanted to become a librarian. And that's what I'm doing now. So libraries have always been good to me. But in this ever-changing world of technology and this evolution where the internet stepped in back in '90s, late '90s, it changed the world of libraries. It changed the world of how information was managed and handled. So I want to take a very brief look at the history of libraries And we're going to go back. We're going to go back to ancient Mesopotamia. And Mesopotamia, again, is modern day Syria, Turkey, and Iran. And you have the earliest evidence of libraries coming from Mesopotamia and Egypt. And in Egypt, you have the Library of Alexandria. And it was established in ancient Egypt. And this place became the center for major scholarship and learning. And its extensive collection of scrolls. And this library was used to preserve a lot of Greek and Roman literature that was being produced at the time. And then you have this move into this medieval and Renaissance era. And you have these religious libraries, these monastic libraries. And these monasteries throughout Europe, in the Middle Ages, you have these libraries playing a crucial role in the preserving and copying of manuscripts. And again, copying of manuscripts, because this is before the printing press. Monks, priests were copying manuscripts by hand. And one of the things, if we look back to history, priests at the time were revered by kings and by people. Again, this is an agrarian society where people are not very educated. Education is not for everybody and available to everybody. But priests were those people that had, first of all, the connection to God. And not only that, but they also had information and access to information and access to education. And so priests were looked upon as these major figures within these societies because they were the educated ones, the ones that could read, the ones that could write. And then you have a shift. You have a shift into these other libraries throughout. The Islamic golden age of libraries in Baghdad. And it contributed to major advancements in science and mathematics and medicine. And then you have another shift to the Renaissance libraries, those libraries in Italy that began to collect and preserve ancient texts and expanding on the knowledge of everybody and for everybody. In the 18th and 19th century, you see the rise of public libraries and academic libraries. And the concept of these public libraries were first thought of by Benjamin Franklin, of a lending place for people, again, to expand on their knowledge. And with the invention of the printing press, then you had books that were being made readily available to anybody. So libraries have taken many different steps to become what they are today. And so as we continue to look at that, we see this evolution of libraries. And in academic libraries, things such as the Library of Congress in Washington, D.C., that continues to play an important role in research and education. And as they continue to evolve, they have had to embrace digital formats and technologies because they need to make accessible these resources to everybody, to wide audiences, to communities. And these places within communities, these are hubs. Libraries, modern libraries, are community hubs. They offer not only books, but they offer information. They offer computer access. They offer places to meet, places for teens to gather. I visit the public library here in Bronzeville, and I see chess teachers teaching students how to play chess. And there's this excitement of people when they go in there and they pull out the book that they need, that they want, that they've been looking for. And that's what libraries do. They allow us those opportunities to borrow for free. They're not charging us anything. So the early concepts of libraries were, again, to spread information, to spread education. And that's what libraries still do. Whether it's a school library, whether it's the public library or the university library, we are open, and they are open to providing this information to students, to the public, to the community, to faculty members, to staff. And these are places of learning. Now, I'll talk a little bit more about that because there's a lot of things that are happening in the legislation of changing libraries. And we're hearing about libraries that are being censored. We'll discuss that a little bit further. But these community hubs within our public libraries, places that we can go, gather. Some places have restaurants. Some places have snack bars where you can buy a pizza and a coffee and enjoy a good book. And these are also places where we can preserve our culture. We can preserve our heritage. And that is a major and a vital part of these institutions, is to preserve knowledge from the past. Here at the University of Texas Rio Grande Valley, we have a wonderful special collections and archive. You walk in there and these materials are years old. Items dating back to the 1700s. History of Brownsville, history of northern Mexico, history of McAllen, Sharyland. Some wonderful and fascinating first-hand experiences, first-hand notes, primary source materials, as we call them. And so things are changing, but as much as they change, we still need to make sure that those things are preserved. And so one of the things that has been happening a lot is the rise of artificial intelligence. And not only in libraries, but artificial intelligence, as a whole. And it's affecting everything. AI. You watch a football game on Sundays, and you hear about how the NFL is using AI for simulations. You hear about how AI is being used in education. And libraries are feeling that as well. So I mentioned earlier that as libraries, a lot of times we feel that we're losing our users, we're losing our patrons, we're losing our students to the internet and to AI. As an instructional librarian, I love going into classes, I love teaching classes, and I really enjoy working with a lot of these younger researchers and young scholars as they progress through their academic careers, because they are starting fresh. And you have a hand in that as a librarian, as an information professional. You have a hand in molding what they are going to become. And so with that said, what I also know is that a lot of times students want to use the internet rather than use the library. They want to go into Google because that makes sense to them. They want to go into AI because everything is readily available. You type in a prompt and it is going to give you what you want. But again, as librarians and as libraries, we have to be at the forefront of these things. So after the break, I'm going to talk a little bit about AI and how AI is impacting libraries and librarians. And how, as libraries, we also need to evolve. And instead of shunning away from AI, we need to use it as a learning opportunity. So I'm going to talk a little bit about the advantages and disadvantages to AI. This artificial intelligence that pretty much is doing what we are asking it to do. But is it really? So I'm really enjoying this conversation. I really like where this is going, and I hope that you're enjoying it too. You're listening to Library Talk and everything else only on Vaquero Radio, the Valley's student station. Thank you so much, everybody. A little Taylor Swift to get us going this Thursday morning. Before the break, I talked about AI, artificial intelligence, and so I have an article here from the IBM's official website. So I downloaded this article, and I want to read it to you, so be a little patient with me here as I read what is AI. AI, artificial intelligence, is technology that enables computers and machines to simulate human learning, comprehension, problem-solving, decision-making, creativity, and autonomy. Applications and devices equipped with AI can see and identify objects. They understand and respond to human language. They can learn from new information and experience. They make detailed recommendations to users and experts. They can act independently, replacing the need for human intelligence or intervention. Into 2024, most AI researchers and practitioners and most AI related headlines are focused on the breakthroughs of generative AI, a technology that can create original text, images, video, and other content. And so, if you're listening to that, what does that mean exactly? That pretty much means that artificial intelligence is this computer generated information provider. And if you've ever used anything AI related, such as ChatGPT, you can type in any entry that you're looking for and it will give you what it is that you want. You can type in a research paper on the history of libraries and it will provide you with that in real time, in seconds. So as you're sitting there, you're thinking, well, this can be scary, but it can also be revolutionary. And again, tools such as ChatGPT, Meta AI, Google Bard, Microsoft Copilot, Google Gemini, these tools are equipped and ready to provide you information. Now, is it always accurate? We're going to talk about the advantages and disadvantages to that. But I remember the very first time I was at a library conference, and this was years ago, and they were talking about AI, and they were discussing AI and showing very rudimentary type AI technology. And I was at the conference, and these librarians and these information professionals were typing in just regular texts, and they were getting responses in instant messaging. And then another thing that I found fascinating, and you see this a lot if you follow social media, if you're on TikTok or if you're on YouTube, you see these AI generated videos and AI generated movies and pictures and images. And I remember, so at this conference, this person was introducing these different tools, tools such as ChatGPT 4o, Adobe Firefly, Canva, and so many others if you type it into the internet. And so a really funny image that the person was doing at the conference was he told AI, he told the system, give me a picture. And it was a random topic too. He mentioned to the AI system, he said, give me a picture of SpongeBob standing next to the Statue of Liberty. And in seconds, you had an image of SpongeBob next to the Statue of Liberty. So the power to go beyond just that funny picture is there. You see movie trailers that are fake, that are not real. Movie trailers that look phenomenal and extraordinary. And like, wow, I didn't know this actor was going to be the new Popeye. I didn't know there's even a Thundercats movie that was coming out. I didn't know there was a new Batman with this particular actor. And again, because this is AI generated. And again, a lot of younger users are coming into the library with this technology of how to develop and create these things and how to search AI. I've actually had an opportunity of looking at several different syllabi from professors when they come in to ask for research assistance. And a lot of professors are now putting messages in their assignments where they say this is not an assignment that should be AI produced. Because if you're listening as a student, there are tools for us to detect AI as well. And so you have these faculty members, you have librarians, you have schools, you have all these different places that are dealing with AI. And there are advantages to it as well as disadvantages. So if we look at some of the advantages of AI, we see and we notice that it increases efficiency and productivity. These automated tasks that were once mundane now can be done faster than humans because it's produced by the computer. And AI, according to the research, is better at decision making and can analyze target data sets and patterns and data-driven decisions. And that all leads to better outcomes, sometimes better than human judgment can. And it reduces human error many times. because it minimizes the human errors that, again, become mundane and become a little too complex for us. And it reduces costs a lot of times. Automation and these processes of these different things. And that's where we run into problems too, because a lot of people begin to worry, well, am I going to lose my job to AI? Am I going to lose my job to a computer, to artificial intelligence? And these machines run 24/7. So access to these systems, they're never going to, be tired. They're never going to get off the clock. They're never going to give attitude. And again, they enhance the customer experience. When you have somebody going into a library looking for a particular thing, and they're using some of these AI-powered chatbots and these other applications related to AI, they improve the customer service, again, because you're not dealing with a human. Now, you're never going to lose that human touch. I think that's more important. And some of the other advantages are the innovation that can be done. And this is across various fields. I'm not just talking about libraries. We're talking about products, services, processes, construction, and all of these different things that are affected with AI. And a lot of times we worry because with this much freeing of human workers, are we going to lose our job to these computers? And we're going to lose these jobs to AI. We as librarians, are we going to be in a situation where students feel, I don't need a librarian anymore? And we don't want to ever get to that. As librarians, we need to advocate for our profession. We need to continue to show students and educate them and empower them to continue to do research in the proper way. And that's the responsibility that as librarians and as library information professionals we have. We can encourage research in the proper way. And so the disadvantages to AI include, again, that job displacement. Am I going to lose my job? The automation driven by AI could lead to job losses, potentially. These ethical dilemmas within AI, where they perpetuate, bias because of the way they're set up, because their accountability is not there, and privacy concerns. Large amounts of personal data are going through and streaming through. If I go into ChatGPT and I type in, who is Joel Chirinos, it's going to give me who I am, where I work, my contact information. I mean, you can find that on the internet, but if I go into an AI generator, it'll tell me. And it probably knows more about me than I know about myself. So you run into security risks and privacy concerns, where AI and computers are always vulnerable to cyber attacks and data breaches. And sometimes we just have this over-reliance on technology. And I started with that at the very beginning when I discussed students that are coming in with that technology-driven mentality already, and how they know a lot about technology. And our reliance and our over-reliance to technology, sometimes, we become too dependent on it. And what if it's not there? When it comes to libraries and the information is not there, where do we go? We go to our books. We can't forget about our books. Books are wonderful resources that we tend to forget about. But those resources are always going to be there. And when you look at other disadvantages, you have that lack of emotion, lack of creativity. And AI struggles with some of these things. How does problem solve? Because again, there's no understanding of human emotion. And sometimes the cost, software and training and various things like that are not worth it. It's a disadvantage to a company. And all AI systems make errors. They may provide misinformation or misleading information. And again, we talked about this, making biased decisions or misinterpreting data. So some of the things that occur within AI that are the more common errors are, again, misinformation and something called hallucinations. Hallucination is a term that refers to AI systems where generating plausible but false information or inventing details. And for example, an AI might cite something that is non-existent or fabricate a story. So for as much as reliance of as we base ourselves onto AI, there are things that don't always work to our advantage. Sometimes they used flawed or incomplete data. And again, I talked about this over reliance and reliance solely on AI without adequate human oversight. It brings about errors and this lack of contextual understanding. And again, with AI right now, there is no governance, and there's a lack of governance. And it could lead to, again, systems making errors without proper safeguards or checks. And we run into the ethical and safety concerns. They perpetuate this information, and they have these societal biases, and they raise ethical concerns about fairness and justice and safety concerns, about healthcare and vehicles that drive themselves, and crashes and accidents that happen. So for as much as you have your advantages to AI, you also have your disadvantages. This incorrect data interpretation and inadequate planning because we're basing everything on AI. But what is the librarian's role within AI? What do librarians do now that libraries are evolving and changing? And librarians are playing an increasingly important role in the age of AI. They're moving from managing solely physical collections and supporting research, digital literacy, and ethical considerations surrounding AI. That's what we're looking at as professionals, as librarians. And it starts from a very young age. It starts from those middle school libraries. It starts from those high school libraries. It starts from those elementary libraries and even the public library to begin to educate our young patrons. Although they may not want to hear about the disadvantages of AI, but a lot of times they are open to it. And so librarians are not being replaced by AI necessarily, but they can use it to empower themselves. They are leveraging AI to enhance their services and better serve their communities in this digital age and in those digital patrons that are coming in. So AI plays an important role, but so do librarians. And I, as a librarian, feel that we play a more important role than AI. And we could use AI as a tool, again, to empower our users. And as librarians in this AI era, we need to be open to facilitating AI literacy. We need to teach our students, we need to teach our patrons about these tools. But again, teach them the right and proper way and the responsible way to be researchers. Because again, that is what we do. We support research. One of the things that I love about this show is that we advocate for research and we talk about research and we push research. Because AI can assist in providing advanced search capabilities. But again, as librarians, we need to also be on the cusp of that and at the forefront of what is responsible researching. Because again, there are ethical considerations. There's this opportunity to develop educational resources for AI. We can also enhance discoverability with AI. Make it easier for our researchers and our students and our patrons to find what they're looking for. And again, it's all about empowerment. We need to educate our users on what the tools that are out there. One of the tools that comes up a lot for research when students go into Google and they type in a topic is Wikipedia. And for many years, librarians shunned away from Wikipedia. Don't use Wikipedia. Don't use Wikipedia. Well, as a librarian myself, I use Wikipedia, but I'm not going to use it as my sole research tool. But there is a way that you can use Wikipedia in a smart way. If you look at a Wikipedia entry and you go to the very bottom of those references, or that entry rather, you can look at those references, and that's what was used in order to create that entry and work your way backwards. So as we used to shun Wikipedia and we're embracing it now, the same thing with AI. We cannot shun away from it. We need to embrace it and use it to our advantage by improving overall services and also providing personalized services. Making relevant resources available and providing tailored research assistance using AI. So as librarians, we're still important, everybody. As libraries, they are still important. So we're going to talk a little bit more about, as we begin to close out the show, a little bit more about the evolution that is continuing. And I'm not just talking technology, but I'm talking about legislative decisions that are being made. Talking about censorship, talking about how things are being stifled within libraries. We'll talk a little bit more about that after the break. You're listening to Library Talk and everything else only on Vaquero Radio, the Valley's student station. Thank you so much, everybody. One of the things that I love about this show is the opportunity that I have to be with you every week. But one of the things that happens is that the time goes by so quickly. It really does. And as we're beginning to wind this show down, I really do ask you for your support of libraries, and they will continue to stay alive. You see what I did there? That's comedy gold for Library Talk and everything else. But seriously, we are going to finish the show in a couple of minutes. And one of my favorite parts of the show is where I go out there and I ask individuals what they think of the different topics that we discuss. So I'll cover that in a little bit. But I do want to read this to you because and this is from the internet. It says university libraries are facing increasing pressure to censor materials due to concerns about divisive concepts related to diversity, equity, and inclusion initiatives, as well as those focusing on sex, gender, and sexuality. This pressure often comes from state-level legislative and policy changes aimed at limiting certain content and language in schools and libraries. While academic library collections are not directly censored, decisions about what is added to the collection is often influenced by external pressures. And as we finish today's episode, I do want to mention the importance of libraries. Because with everything going on regarding legislation, regarding AI, regarding funding, and cutting back on services, I honestly and truly believe that libraries are institutions that we need to protect and we need to continue to support. I've always felt that libraries are places for exploration, learning, they're safe spaces, they're communities, some of the things that we talked about today. There are places where we preserve and conserve our history. And I've always felt, and one of the aspects that I love about the university level library is that this is a place for exploration and for learning and for free thought. So a lot of these things that are affecting libraries come down to concerns about age appropriateness and divisive topics. And some individuals within communities object to books and materials that they believe are not age appropriate and that promote, divisive concepts. And again, in regards to diversity, equity, and inclusion. And this impacts academic freedom. This pressure to censor materials, it affects the freedom of inquiry and access to information. And I just talked about that, about access to information. As libraries, as librarians, we need to advocate for the access to information. We are in positions where we want to encourage people to go beyond what we have in the library stacks. We want them to go and learn and inquire and ask research questions and become informed and become educated. And that is the power of librarians. And that is the power of libraries. And that is one of the things that attracts me to libraries so much, is that a student comes in and can look for whatever interests them, whatever they want to learn about, whatever they want to know about. Libraries have that power to provide students, researchers, patrons, the community with that access to. Some states have enacted laws and policies that limit certain topics or languages in school libraries. And it's understandable. School libraries, they run on a different way of funding. And there are people that are very vocal about the materials that belong on shelves. And this has an impact on various things, an impact on the library staff, because often they are caught in the middle of these challenges. They're caught in the middle of making decisions that they know should be upheld because they want to provide information to users. But again, they face harassment or even loss of jobs because they are advocating for the removal or the pushing of books. So it's a really kind of a tough street that librarians sometimes face. And these challenges on academic libraries, and again, while academic libraries are not always indirectly censored, the pressure to censor materials, it comes to self-censorship by librarians, and the impact to build diverse collections. And it also impacts student learning when we're starting to limit and when we limit resources and access to materials. We want to have students engage with those diverse perspectives and develop their own critical thinking skills. We need those diverse collections to promote various ideas, lifestyles, and experiences. And we really must try to avoid censorship and allow for free thought and ideas, and allow those ideas to come through in libraries. I really enjoyed this conversation. And I can't believe I haven't done this before. Talked about librarianship and libraries and library staff and the power of libraries and what they do, what they can do, and what sometimes we're facing as limitations. AI, I know I covered that a lot, and we talked about the advantages and disadvantages to that. But with everything, libraries are still standing. And again, they are staying alive. But we need to support the libraries. We need to support the library staff, the librarians, and all those individuals that are advocating for those resources to expand on educational opportunities and experiences. Again, one of my favorite parts of the show is when I go out there and I ask questions to individuals, and sometimes it lends itself to it, sometimes it doesn't. But this was one of the ones that it did. And so I asked the question today as I walked around asking people, why are libraries important? And so here are the responses. Libraries are important because they are the heart of any community. They are the heart of a university, a school district, a community, and is the first place that a child understands the power of reading. Another person said because it houses a lot of resources not available anywhere else, and it's a safe space for students. Someone else said it's a building full of resources, study rooms, and wonderful staff that goes above and beyond to assist you. Another person said because you can do your homework without distractions. And following up with that same comment, somebody else said the silence that allows you to study without distractions. Someone else said to assist our students the best we can. And somebody else said, I think libraries are important because it provides access to information that we don't always have at home and encourages our imagination to explore knowledge. And G.I. Joe always said, knowing is half the battle. This was a really interesting response as well, and they took things a little differently. They answered that librarians themselves are dangerous. I was like dangerous to who? And they said librarians are dangerous to ignorance, censorship, boredom, outdated printer settings, misinformation, apathy, and loneliness. And they said librarians don't just help students find books, they help them find themselves. Thank you so very much, everybody, for joining us and for this episode of Library Talk and everything else. This is part of our last shows. We have one next week, and our last episode is on May 1st. So if you've liked and enjoyed the content, you can always go back and listen to the Vaquero radio YouTube station, or channel. And not only will you find past episodes of this show, but you'll also see the wonderful shows that are produced by student media here at UTRGV. I encourage you to go back and listen to all the other shows that are produced. And I do want to take this opportunity to thank you, the listener, for supporting us, for being here, and for allowing us, again, the opportunity to be here with you every Thursday morning at 10. I also want to thank Student Media for their assistance, with Jan and his team for their assistance in helping set up every week as we go through the show. Thank you so very much, everybody. Hope you enjoyed the show. Hope you enjoyed today's episode, and hope you continue to support the show. One last thing, and this will be the last song we're going to play today, is in honor of what would have been Selena Quintanilla Perez's 54th birthday yesterday, April 16th. We'll close out today's show with one of our more popular songs. Thank you so very much, everybody. You've been listening to Library Talk and everything else only on Vaquero Radio, the Valley's student station.